Okay, we're going to get things started. Good morning, everybody. This is a meeting of the Taneytown Board of Election Supervisors, and I am the City Attorney, Jay Gullo. As we start the meeting, I'll lead off until you can elect your presiding officers, and then we'll let your presiding officers move ahead. So to start the meeting, I think it'd be important, since some of you are returning, some of you are already on the board, if you could just introduce yourself so that people know who they're talking to.
Sue Billings.
Barbara Heltebrottle.
This is Bill Kennedy.
Judy Furbay.
Great. So you're our Board of Elections for the upcoming election cycle, and you know this is the season for that. The city election is on May 1st, and everything from the election is then calculated backwards as to when advertisements need to be done, the deadline for registering for the elections needs to be done, and what we're doing today is the deadline for the candidate certification. So the first role of business is to elect a presiding officer. It would be your chairman. You're going to elect a chairman and you're going to elect a vice chairman. So among the four of you, you can decide either by nomination or by motion or however else you want to force somebody into doing it.
I make a motion that Bill Kennedy is the chairman.
I second.
Okay. All right. If there's no more nominations, you want to vote on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And no one opposed. So Mr. Kennedy, you are the chairman for another cycle, and I'll turn it over to you to elect your vice chairman.
Okay, we'll open the floor for nominations for vice chair. I will accept a volunteer.
I'll volunteer.
There you go. She's
Okay, we have a volunteer.
Great.
Thank you.
And is there anybody opposed to Ms. Hildebridle being the vice chair?
Seeing as there are no opposed, the volunteer is accepted.
Very good. All right, we'll get into your roles as we get down closer to election day. But today we're going to focus on the task at hand. You have your agenda. There is one item of business, this is new business, and is the annual, or I guess semi-annual, certification of candidates. As you are aware, we have 5 candidates who have filed to run for office. And those candidates so far are 3 candidates for mayor. We have Bradley J. Wantz, Daniel M. Haynes, and Christopher G. Miller. And we have 2 candidates that have filed to run for the 2 council seats, and that is James L. McCarron and Christopher Tillman. To be a candidate in the city of Taneytown, there are just a very few requirements. The first requirement is you have to be registered to vote. The second requirement is you have to be a resident of the town. If you're running for mayor, it's 5 years prior to holding office. And the third requirement is you have to fill out the necessary paperwork. There are 2 items of paperwork. You should have them in front of you. The first is a certificate of nomination. It has to be filled out completely. Name, address, the date of birth, and when you were a resident of the town. And the second piece of information is a financial disclosure form. And the financial disclosure forms are required by state law and administered by the city of Taneytown through its ethics board. And it is the same form that our elected officials have to fill out every year, disclosing relevant financial information that citizens may want to use to make sure there are no conflicts of interest and things like that. So all of the candidates have submitted the necessary paperwork. All of the candidates submitted the necessary financial disclosure forms. The Ethics Commission met last week to review the financial disclosure forms and noted that there were some issues that had to be corrected. They met last Tuesday, and they gave the candidates a deadline till Thursday to correct these issues. And Clara was given the task of doing these things, making sure that the issues were corrected. And she can report to me that they all have been corrected. Is that correct, Clara?
That's correct.
That's right. Now, you don't have copies of those forms on the table because there was no need for you to review them. It was the ethics board had to review them. And so the ethics board certified that they had filled out the financial disclosure forms properly. And that's where we are today. So if you were looking at a a checklist, you would say, yes, the candidates filed their certificate of nomination, and yes, the ethics boards has approved the financial disclosure forms. So those two check marks have been met. To do our due diligence, Clara runs through the state election board for Carroll County and gets the date everyone has registered to vote in the city. And so, Clara, did you give them that information?
Yes, they all have that.
Okay, so you have a list in front of you of when everybody registers to vote. And there are no issues. An eyebrow was raised with Mr. Miller's because his registration to vote was in 2019. And on his candidate nomination form, he listed his residency as 2017. And of course, you have to be a resident for 5 years from May 1st, 2023, which would make it May 1st, 2018. So with that discrepancy, Mr. Miller was contacted to say, you need to provide additional information to show your residency, any type of documented proof that would be the case of that. And the reason for that, and to explain that, I have written a memo, and Clara, they all have my memo, right?
They do.
Okay. So it's in front of you. You can take the opportunity to kind of read through it. I'll summarize it so the public can understand what the memo says. But basically, it says that there is a requirement that candidates be residents, and this is usually verified just through checking the election data, because the court has decided that the best test of where you're a resident is where you vote, because you have one place that you can vote. But there are some times where more information is needed because where you vote might not be where you reside. For example, in Mr. Miller's case, he registered to vote in 2019, but he resided in town prior to that. And our charter talks about reside, not register to vote. So to be clear, the requirement is you must reside in the city of Taneytown for 5 years prior to taking office. The requirement is not you must be registered to vote in the city of Taneytown. Okay. So then I give you a bunch of legalese where we have to figure out when the election, the registration to vote date is different. What does the court direct you all, the people who look into this and make the decision? What should you look at to determine when a person resides there? And so I gave you a bunch of the controlling factors from the Constitution and the case law of the Court of Appeals. But page 2 gives you a laundry list. And this is the laundry list that the court says you can use. One is not more important than the other. They look at it as a scale. You take these things and you put them on a scale. And if it shows a balance that it's in favor of, yes, these things show somebody has lived here, then that will take into account. And then you can usually make your determination on that. So to give the list so everybody knows what we're dealing with, the laundry list the court has considered is the paying of taxes and statements on tax returns, property ownership, where a person's children attend school, the address where one receives mail, statements as to residency contained in contracts or documents, statements on licenses or government documents, where your furniture and your personal belongings are kept, the jurisdiction where the banks are utilized, membership in any professional organizations, religious or social things, where one's physicians or dentists are located, where one maintains charge accounts or bank accounts, and any other relevant contact that that person has with the jurisdiction. So based on that, we asked Mr. Miller to submit any other documentation, and he submitted 13 items, which you do not have copies of. We didn't want to make 13 times 4 items, but I would highlight what they are, and Clara does have the copies on her desk should you wish to review them. The items that he submitted, we have all vetted and reviewed, and I'm going to go over each one. The first exhibit is a W-2 from 2017 listing his address as 107 Trevanion Road. Exhibit 2 is the 1040 that he and his wife filed on 2017, listing the same 107 address. Exhibit 3 is the 1040 for 2018. Exhibit 4 is the 1040 for 2019. Exhibit 5, the 2040 from 2020. Exhibit 6, the 1040 for 2021. So basically, he's showing us 5 years of tax returns, listing his address on Trevanion Road. It's worth noting that it started at 107, and then it moved to the house he currently resides in at 107A. So all within the Taneytown area, obviously. Exhibit 7 that he submits is a certificate of title for a Dodge vehicle. It was dated July 1st, 2017, showing the address registered to 107 on Trevanion Road, that address. Exhibit 8, he gives us a correspondence from the government, from the Department of Veterans Affairs, outlining benefits, showing that he actually receives mail at that address, and the government acknowledges that. And that letter was dated August 19th, 2017. He gives us a copy of a checking statement from USAA for the period of June 2017 to July 2017, and that also lists the address at 107. Gives us a statement from Suburban Propane. That's a transaction report that goes back and shows transactions for Suburban Propane as of December 2017. It gives us Exhibit 11 is the Abilene Teachers Federal Credit Union Bank statement, and that lists the address at 107. That statement is dated June 30th, 2017. Exhibit 12 is a retail installment sales for the purchase of a Dodge car from Len Stoller, and the date of that agreement is June 30th, 2017. And finally, Exhibit 13, he gives us a birth certificate for his daughter, which lists the address of the parents at the Trevanion Road address. So when I looked at this, and again, as your attorney, I'm just giving you my advice. It is your decision. But when taking the bullet points that I have provided to you in my memo and the documentation that Mr. Miller has provided, I think it's clear that he has proven that he has resided in the town, both at 107 and then 107A. And it doesn't matter if you move around as long as you're in the town for that period of time. And then I direct you to my last paragraph where it says, in summary, the foremost factors in determining an individual's domicile are the individual's place of residence and where they vote or register to vote. However, the court has acknowledged that on rare occasion that there is confusion in the matter, the above factors are generally utilized in determining which location the individual has his domicile. So it's certainly up to you. You can discuss it. You can ask Clara to look at those documents. But it is my opinion that the tests from the Court of Appeals are met by what Mr. Miller has submitted.
I agree. Sounds like he's.
Okay. After, pardon me, after reading Jay's memo thoroughly, and having listened to the presentation that he made, with the bullet points confirming Mr. Miller's residency, I would strongly recommend that we accept his certificate of nomination forthwith.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay. We'll make a formal motion towards the end of your meeting on these. So I think we've dispensed with that issue. I know that the letter went out to Mr. Miller stating that he had an opportunity to speak if he wanted to, but in my discussions with him, I told him that that was probably not necessary because the documents are better than that. So I'm going to move on to one other issue just to clarify it so that everyone understands. As I said, there are two elements that you look at: the certificate of nomination and the financial disclosure forms. You will notice we have never talked about campaign finance forms. Your body does not review the campaign finance forms, meaning the money that the candidates take, the money that the candidates spend. Those are all completely reviewed by the ethics board. And the ethics board has its own authority and power to regulate and police those issues. So they do not really affect, the filing of those does not affect whether people are candidates or not, which is why we didn't bring it to your attention. However, there is going to be an ethics board hearing tomorrow afternoon because one of the potential candidates has concerns have been raised about his financial or his campaign finance forms. So I just wanted you to hear that so you don't have any confusion when you hear there's other hearings going on. And so to summarize, I'm sure I confused you at this point. To summarize, Those issues do not reflect on whether or not a person is a candidate. They can be controlled, policed, and punished if they don't follow those laws. The only issues that concern the police if a person is a candidate is the ones before you today. So if you're satisfied with the information that has been provided for the 5 candidates, we'd like you to make a motion and a second, discuss it, and vote on it. So Clara can put that in the record.
I make a motion that we accept Chris Miller's application to run for mayor.
I second it.
I think we actually, should we just bundle them as a
Yeah.
group?
You can do them all together if you'd like.
I make a motion, we accept all the applicants. I amend my motion. We accept all the applicants.
Okay,
running
do we
for
have a
mayor.
second?
I second the motion.
We have a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Seeing there are none, all of the certificates of nomination have been accepted by the board. Congratulations to the candidates.
Very good. We will consider them certified. The names will now be added for the absentee ballots because that is the next deadline that is coming up. And they'll be put on the regular ballot. So that starts our election cycle. And Clara, while you have everybody there, do you want to give them a couple minutes of what's going to be expected of them as far as timing for election day? I know that everybody has experience. We probably don't need to meet in advance, but when do you want them to show up and how long will they be there and so forth, so on?
Well, I'll arrive at the police station about 6 o'clock, but the election doesn't really start until 7. So if you could be there maybe a half hour early, that would be preferable. When you arrive there, everything will already be set up for the election, just based on the way we've always set it up in years past.
Are we meeting the night before, like last time?
No, I'll have everything set up already, so there's really no need to meet before election day.
So, Mr. Chairman, you were there last year as chairman. Were there any concerns about how the election was set up or done? Because otherwise, Clara's going to set it up physically the same way as last year.
I think the way we had it set up last year with the folks coming in the side door of this police department small room and then exiting through the front door worked quite well. We had a very simple path. You walk in, turn right, and hit all the stations, check-in stations, and then vote, and you're out the door. I think it took until we got pretty busy there for a while. People were in and out in less than 3 minutes, I think. So, you know, it doesn't take long. And as long as we set up to make the process run smoothly, which we try our best to do, again, it doesn't take long, and it's a simple process, and I do not anticipate any candidate shenanigans like we've had in previous elections this time around. So I think things will run a heck of a lot smoother.
Well, we'll be using the same equipment from Electech. Is that correct, Clara?
Yes.
So you're familiar with the equipment, which is why we don't need to meet earlier. We also will be assigning the city staff member that worked with you last. Ms. Drumheller will be working with you. So we have a complement of 5 people to actually run things while you're there, and that seemed to work. And we anticipate having, a good turnout.
Yeah, I think it's through time, been through this process several times, and I think it gets better every time, just because people know what to expect. our people know what to expect. And I think the public coming in knows pretty much how the thing runs, and they're more than amenable to following the procedure.
We anticipate sending a memo on your behalf to the 5 candidates explaining the campaign distance. That's always an issue where the lines are marked. So we'll be explaining that and what they can and can't do in there. We'll also be explaining their opportunity to have a poll watcher, what they need to do if they want to have a poll watcher, and then we'll accommodate the poll watcher in the facility. And then how we will deal with the election results and the tabulations at the end of the day. So they should be very clear on what's expected of them, and they'll know what's expected of you. So, Clara, am I missing anything? Anything you want to add?
I can't think of anything unless you wanted to review the absentee ballot process.
If you want to do that with them, that'd be great, just so everybody can make sure we're on the same page. It's outlined in our code, and Clara, why don't you tell them about it?
Okay, well, as you all know, our election is from 7 to 7. You won't be leaving at 7 o'clock right after the election because we'll have to calculate all of the absentee ballots, which we do by hand.
So, anyone's eligible to get an absentee ballot. The process is pretty straightforward. It's going to be advertised as before, where they contact the city to say they want one, and then one is mailed to them, or they come pick it up, and then it's placed in the multiple envelopes, as you're familiar with. And we don't have tremendously, too many. It's several dozen at least, but it still takes a little while to tabulate those. So that is pretty much our issues for now. We don't anticipate that your board will meet again, but of course, if we do, Claire will be in contact with you, and we'll look for an extra long day. I'm sure Claire will be in touch with you about the logistics for, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and all the other stuff. It's the same as normal. So unless you all have any questions for me or for the staff, Mr. Chairman, you can make a motion to adjourn.
I have a question.
Sure.
The mayor, the last time, we did have an issue with the judges. And I was just wondering what the rules are for a judge to sit there and how many per candidate or
You mean as far as poll watchers?
poll watchers, yes.
Poll watchers, yes. So the poll watcher, in general, for a person to be a poll watcher, you have to be nominated by a candidate. So you just can't roll in off the street and say, I want to do it. And so there's a nomination form that has to be filled out in advance. Can't be done that day either. There are requirements for a poll watcher, and they're on the requirement list. That's we can't think of all of them, but they have to be a registered voter. And there are things they can't be. They can't be the candidate themselves. So the candidate themselves can't be the poll watcher. So they basically have those requirements. They'll be given the forms in advance and say, if you have poll watchers, you have to come in. We allow one poll watcher per candidate at a time. So we will have space for them. They will be segregated off from the area. That seems to have worked in the past, where they're not going to be in your area while you're working. They're not going to be able to communicate or talk to or deal with the voters. They're there to watch while they're in the facility. And a person can have several poll watchers. So just for example, you could have 5 poll watchers that each are going to sit in there for 2 hours at a time, and they can rotate in and out. So you can have as many poll watchers as you want, but only one in there at a time for each candidate. So does that answer your question?
Yes,
Okay, great.
thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I'm looking forward to spending the day with you on May 1st.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Chairman, if you want to make a motion to adjourn so Clara can note the time.
He said you should.
You,
We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
I second the motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, meeting is adjourned.
Very good. See you in May.
Thank you.
See you, Jay.